So thank you so much again for joining us for our first series on being an African student in Canada basic. And then initially I started with the quote that says, success is not final and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And what that does, it reminds us that setbacks are a natural part of the learning process. And it encourages resilience and a growth mindset, emphasizing the ability to persevere as key components to being successful. Tonight, as our African students in Canada navigate their learning process, we are here to assist them and share our stories on how they can do that with courage and purpose. Tonight, we're really, really, really grateful to have among us our distinguished speakers who will be sharing their stories with you and advice and having a rich discussion on how our students can do that. And tonight, we have with us Doctors Anya Duba, and please forgive me for the pronunciations. And we also have Dr. Dordunu and Dr. Yarrow. And you will learn a little bit more about them as I will ask them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves so you can hear the correct pronunciation from them. And I will hope to continue that throughout. So just a few sentences on who you are as we start the process in this. So welcome to our students, to those who are joining us online. We really, really appreciate you. Students, colleagues, we thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to have a very engaging and insightful discussion tonight. And we will start with Dr. Ania Duba, and I hope I said that correctly, Chico.
You actually did try very well. Thank you so much, Kishai.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me. My name is Chiwo Anyaduba. And I think it's okay to do first name tonight
Okay.
so that we can chat
Yes.
more casually.
That is perfect.
Yeah. I'm an associate professor in the English department at the University of Winnipeg with Kishai. And I teach African literatures and literatures of mass atrocities generally. And I've been in Canada since 2013. I did my PhD at the University of Manitoba before transitioning to becoming a professor at the University of Winnipeg.
Thank you so much, Chigbo, for that kind introduction. Is it Ziva? We'll go next, and I hope our Diziva will go next.
Jifa. DZ is a G, so Jifa.
All right.
Good to meet you all. My name is Jifa Dordunu, and I'm associate professor. I'm a trained registered nurse, currently in the Department of Anthropology. Previously worked both here in Canada and the US, and originally from Ghana. Good to meet you all.
Thank you so much, Ziva. And Kwesi will go next from the University of Alberta. Go ahead, Kwesi.
Yeah, hi, everyone. It's great pleasure to be part of this webinar. I'm Kwesi Aram, Associate Professor in the Department of Secondary Education at the University of Alberta. I did my PhD with somebody here in the audience, Dr. Razingani. Hi. So we did our program together at UBC. We had a good time there. And right after graduating, I was fortunate enough to get a job at University of Alberta, where I've been teaching for the last 4 years. So I'm still an emerging scholar in the field, learning a lot and contributing to knowledge. So my research interests intersect culturally relevant pedagogies, mathematics and social justice, and also the use of African indigenous worldviews to make sense of kids' mathematics learning within Canadian context. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kwesi. And as we move through this webinar and conversation, I like to call it conversation because that's what we'll be doing this evening. We will learn more about our speakers as we go through some question and answer with them, as students will navigate. So just to give you, my name is Kishai, and I'm an assistant professor at the University of Winnipeg. And this is the voice that you'll hear asking our wonderful speakers questions. Students and audience, feel free to put any question that you have as we are discussing different themes around being an African student in Canada and how to navigate this process. Feel free to put your questions in the chat, or you could always raise your hand using the reaction button if you need to speak, and we'll take your question as we want you to be a part of the conversation. So for the first 30 minutes, I'll be asking our speakers questions based on what registrants would have submitted, and then we'll open the floor for other questions that the audience may have. So thanks again for joining us. Now, we have arranged the questions around different themes, and I know our speakers, Diva, Chikbo, and Kwesi, some of them have come into Canada at different points in their lives. So, for example, Chikbo came to pursue a PhD, while Diva, she did her bachelor's degree here in Canada, and Kwesi did his PhD. So there are different entry points, and so that's pretty interesting to know how they navigate their processes while in Canada. And so our first question is around how do students navigate the settling process with efficiency? And this would have come from a question around, okay, how do I do this fast when I come? But before we get to how we do it fast, we want to know, when you came to Canada, how have you navigated your settlement into school, and also how students can do that with efficiency and purpose? And we'll take Diva first, and then others can join in as necessary, or if you have anything to add. Go ahead, Diva.
Ladies first, I suppose. I was going to
yes,
actually.
I hope the gentlemen are not.
So thanks for the question. And just as a background, you are correct that I actually did my high school here as well. Ooh. So I went through high school. I think I came here in grade 8 or grade 9, one of those places. Is becoming fuzzy as the days go on. But I did my undergrad here and did my master's and PhD in the US. So the question around how do you get yourself settled, I'm going to be talking about it from my secondhand experiences of people that I know around me. So this is not my personal experience, right? Mm-hmm. So from, and basically what I advise students to do. And my apologies, I have a really massive headache right now. I took something before I got on. So if I'm squinting and all of this, it's not you, it's just my head hurts, but it should, hopefully, medicine should kick in soon. But
we hope so. Sorry
for students that reach out to me that are wanting to do their degrees here, my first recommendation to them is to get them connected to people already here who may have gone through the same program, or even if not the same program, then in the same school. That way they have an up-to-date knowledge of what the processes are. I think in the last 6 months, I got at least 3 or 4 emails from people who are trying to move to BC looking for places. If you know anything about BC, and I don't know if it's like that where you are, accommodation is at a premium. So finding a place and all of those things. So trying to get people connected to folks that are here rooted, international students who can share a more up-to-date experience from what I may have heard from my colleagues years ago. I think it's also important for students to get connected with the international office within the schools that they're trying to go to. So most schools, if not all, have an office. Again, I'm blanking on the name now, but it's like international student support or something of that nature. They do have, some of them have regular webinars, just like you're having right now, about how do you select your supervisor? How do you do your application? How do you do? So getting connected to those things are also very important. And I think another one is, we're all global citizens. So there's always somebody from where you're from within the communities that you're trying to go to. So there are community organizations and associations that you can also Google and search that can help with relocating you or connecting you to the right people. So I'll stop there because I don't want to say everything and not have anything for my colleagues yet to say.
Thank you, Diva. Anyone wants to add anything to what Diva said? And Chikbo, you may have had a different experience coming in to do your PhD here, and that would give us a sense of what that looks like, as our students are maybe in different levels of their educational training. So Chikbo, do you have anything to add to that?
Chifa has said a lot of what I had in mind in terms of looking out for structures and the resources, not just the ones within the institution, but in the community that you could tap and benefit from. From my experience, I think folks are actually willing to help newcomers to settle and do things and so on. As a PhD student, I think my experience was a little unique because I didn't get my visa early because the Canadian immigration offices in Nigeria were on strike. So the processing took longer than usual. So I joined in very late and then had to crash to get catch up and do so many things. But I found eventually that experience rewarding. So my sense would be just to take the conversation about settling a little beyond the structures and the resources and the communities is the attitude itself of settling. I think I would say don't settle if settling means finding everything you need and then relaxing and then feeling I have arrived and all of that. I think what worked for me much more was, in fact, not settling. We have this interesting story from my place about the hen or the chicken. Whenever it gets to a strange land, it stands on one leg. And I mean African chicken, not the ones they do here. Those ones are not wise chickens. The African chicken would stand on one leg. It wouldn't settle. It would explore, try to figure things out. By the time it stands on 2 legs, it meant it has known its place. It knows how to move around the area and so on. But standing on one leg, I think, helps one to ask a lot of questions, constantly approach with the mindset of exploring and seeking to know what one has to do and what matters. I think that attitude was very helpful for me in navigating through the settlement process.
And those are so important, right? And Ziva, talk about how to connect with others, and Chikbo, you talk about how to explore, not just settle, but have an exploration mindset. And those are so important. And I just want to add to that, if you may touch on that a little bit, so any of you, in terms of that time-sensitive process, because sometimes, as an immigrant myself to Canada, I didn't study here, but as an immigrant, sometimes I want to do this fast. Sometimes students want to, move the needle along pretty fast. And what would you say to students who may be anxious about, how soon do I get on 2 feet, right? As Chikbo said, how soon do I get off that 1 foot and land on two feet? Do I need to do this quickly, or do I need to not settle, but to think about how to go through this process in a time efficient way, but also bear in mind that some things do take time? Do you want anyone, if you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I'll go next. Thank you, Kishi. Is that a pronunciation?
That's totally fine tonight. It's Kishan, but Kishi is also fine.
Thank you. And thanks to my colleagues who already, you've already said it all, but I will just add a few lines. I agree with Jifa that having somebody proud to arrival is really great. And I feel I came here to do my master's, and then I transitioned into my PhD. So proud to arrive, and I found that there was a website that at UBC they call International Student Forum, that people were, you could connect with students on campus, at UBC. So I did that, and I felt that really was very beneficial in terms of somebody helping me to settle. Okay, so I didn't find it that hard in terms of finding accommodation prior to arrival. But there is a twist to it. When I started my PhD and my family joined me, I noticed that there was still a lot of stuff to navigate. I didn't know anything, as if I just arrived in Vancouver. I need to look for daycare for my kids, which I think, and also, weekday cares are good. Or what do I do if you have a child, right? Like, all these processes involve a lot of, it's a learning journey. It was a learning journey for me. And even after a couple of years of being a parent and then seeing my kids enroll in daycare, again, it changes. So that it changes when they are going to grade school. So at every point in your life as an international student or as just being an immigrant in Canada, the life experience is so different. And it will come, you will have to buy a house, everything at every stage. Okay, in your life here in Canada, it's so different experience. So I always say that the learning never stops. You keep learning, but limiting this conversation to being an international student, I think I agree with what my previous, my colleagues have already shared. Having somebody in advance is very important, but sometimes you just arrive and you have to navigate a lot of things, but seek for help. Don't think that the world is against you. Everybody is for you. Seek for help. Connect with your community members and so on. And I think that's really important.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. That's such interesting points from our colleagues here. And what you said about coming in at different points is so important, because sometimes we have students who come with families and some students may come alone. And so the process may look a little bit different. And just to piggyback on what Chikbo said about, landing on that 1 foot and then, finding yourself a place where you can stand on 2 feet. And then again, Kwesi, talk about that continuous learning. So sometimes when you're on 2 feet and you think that you're now ready, sometimes you may find yourself have to go back to 1 foot, right? So it is a continuous process of learning and exploration. So thank you so much for those wonderful insights, colleague. And you did touch on my second question about how to build community when you just arrive, and you have answered that pretty well. I think it was Ziva who talked about whether it's someone in your field of study or it could be someone else. So one of the questions that came from our students was about finding community within the Canadian space instead, and that will prevent you from trying to be an African and then trying to be yourself at the same time. Like, how do you build that community from a gender orientation point of view, a field of study point of view, so you don't have to try to be an African on one foot and then trying to be something else that's a part of you on another foot. What would you say to students who are trying to build community, finding themselves within the Canadian space? Ziva, do you want to give it a shot? I'm back to you. But
I was gonna say I'll let the gentleman go this
time.
Go
first this time? Okay.
Yes.
Chikbo or Kwesi,
yeah, I can start. I mean, building and finding community here, I think it's one of the most challenging aspects of especially for international students from African context. At least for me, that was the thing. So on the one hand, there's the thing that pulls you towards your kind, right? And you want to, like, naturally you fall with those who already understand who you are and where you are coming from, and there's a tendency to remain there and find some kind of comfort there. On the other hand, you want to really belong beyond the familiar, right? You want to understand what it means to be in Canada and be part of the Canadian system more generally. And that's when it becomes a little more difficult, for obvious reasons and as well as not so obvious ones. But I think we'll get to some of those much later. But yeah, I mean, there's no hard rules to this, right? It's again, not necessarily in one's hands. There are structures that make it very difficult for folks to throw themselves beyond the communities that, like African communities and so on, or even belong with African communities here, again, depending on identities and experiences, right?
Right.
But what I generally think is like, I want to be open to possibilities, to network with people. I try to wear that attitude of exploring, seeing what might work, and sometimes it's also about personality. Who am I in relation to people? Am I a likable person? I try to do my best to build some kind of charm that allows me to relate with people generally, wherever they come from, whoever they are. And one of the ways I think that works is to be a good listener, someone who listens and hears others, especially in our time. Everyone wants to be heard, but they don't listen to other folks.
Right.
I think that habit allowed me to be in different groups, sort of listen, interact, and not clash in terms of personality and temperament, like navigate different groups and figure out, understand them, not necessarily want to be part of all the groups, right? But again, there are structures that make it very difficult for students to, especially international students who are new here, to belong in more than the kinds of groups they would like. But I advise being more open-minded, exploring, try to interact, challenge yourself and go to different kinds of events, volunteer as well. Volunteering usually helps a lot because you meet people and interact with different groups from other places as well.
Thank you so much, Chikbo. And I think that will I mean, there's a question in the chat around, why a WhatsApp group and community within different universities. And the comment is like, sometimes you can finish school without knowing each other. And so all of you, Diva, Kwesi, and Chikbo, have made that important point about initiating community volunteering, getting involved, and so on within these spaces. So thank you so much for all your answers. And I will move, in the interest of time, I'm going to move to the next questions around job placement. And a lot of students were very, very interested in knowing, how do I navigate finding a job, whether an internship, or maybe some students wanted to know how you can find jobs while working and still being a student. So what tips, or what do you think is helpful for students to know in navigating that process of finding jobs or internship programs that will help them in their field of study? And I'm going to, Ziva, go ahead.
All right, I'll start that one. I'll just say, just adding back to what Chiba was saying around the forming community and, all of those things. The important things of trying to network and connect with others is that these opportunities might just spontaneously present themselves to you, right? So there is a lot to be gained from trying to explore the environment around you. So whether it's going through the official processes at the university where they have clubs and all of those things, or, if people invite you somewhere, I usually say yes. I usually would go once. If I don't like it, you won't see me back again, but at least I'll say yes. I go, I check them out, or, is this somewhere that I want to be or not be? So that would be the first thing I'll say. The other thing I'll say is, I'll give you a story that hopefully illustrates my point, which is I was teaching a research course for third-year students, and I had an interaction with this one particular student in that course. It was more around, he had questions about whether he should take certain courses, including mine, based on other things that was going on in their lives and stuff. So following week, I was surprised. I thought they were going to drop my class, but they were there. So I was like, that was sort of my interaction with the students. And then at the end of the term, and mind you, I'm an assistant prof, relocated back here to Canada. And you would think that process would be easy. And I'm telling you, it wasn't easy at all. It was like, what have I done to myself? So I'm a struggling assistant prof and trying to get my projects and research and teaching and all of those things under my belt. And I get an email from this student that I'm telling you about. And the student said, I don't know if you remember me, but the term has ended, by the way. The term has ended. We were in between terms or something. I don't know if you remember me, but I took your research course. I really would like to volunteer to be a research assistant. And I wonder if you have any research projects going on that I could volunteer to learn more about research. I sat back and I was like, of course, the Africans in the room and their religion would tell you that it is God. I say it's the voodoo God. No, I'm just joking. But, and so I stared at the email for a little while, just thinking, wow, really? And so I emailed them back and I say, I do have projects going on. I do need help, but I actually don't have any money. I have nothing to offer you. I'm sorry. And so then he emailed back, said, no, that's okay. I can volunteer. I just would volunteer for the experience. And I was like, oh my goodness. Now I'm like 10 times more motivated to get a funding or something so that I can support the students in whatever way I can. So the point of the story is that you can reach out to people that either doing work in the field that you are interested in, or, maybe a teacher that you connected with, who knows? see what they have going on, offer your time if you can, if you are able, and you don't know what that's going to lead to. With that student, we did 3 projects together, and I was, I even gave my Pro D expenses. I'm like, can I charge this and use it for research? They're like, yeah, you can. So I was able to find small little pockets of money to support him, even though he didn't. He said, it's okay, I'll just volunteer my time. So that would be what an advice would be in terms of trying to find some job placements.
That's so interesting to learn, and I hope our students are, and I'm sure some of our students in the room can relate to some of those challenges in terms of finding that placement, and it is colleagues and people, like as you said initially, it was just finding that connection, right? That's so important. Chikbo and Kwesi, I'll go with Chikbo first. Do you have anything to add to what Diva said?
I think Kwesi can go ahead because I spoke last before him. So.
Okay, Kwesi, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah. Okay, so for me, just from my own experience, I think job search itself is not an easy thing for anyone. There is no cut down rules that you say, hey, take this path and you are guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed for anyone. And there's also no promise, right, after your graduation. So we are all left in this limbo whilst we pursue our studies. But what I found helpful was making connections even during my graduate studies, just like what Jifa said, right? Those connections, I think, really helped me, like attending conferences and presenting my work and interacting with some scholars in the field. It depends, again, it will differ from if you want to be in academia as opposed to if you want to be in the industry, right? But I'm speaking as somebody in academia and what I felt, okay, helped me. So I felt building those relationships and networks was very beneficial to me. And also, I also did volunteer on a lot of research projects. So that student that contacted you for, that's me, typically, yeah. And sometimes, and Dr. Razingani will also testify to this. You are on a project and, you are paid, and at a certain point, the salary cut, right? Because the funding is finished. I never opted out from those projects. I still continue to stay on. Okay, although I wasn't paid, right? And I found that, and then we were able to, publish through those projects, right? Sometimes as immigrants, I think we overly, I know there is that financial need, but we don't also have to overly focus on that. Okay, just think about what you can gain from that experience. Just like that person who emailed to volunteer. That is so powerful. Okay. But I do understand some come here, they have families home, and they still support a whole community back home. So I completely understand, but let's find some time to just come out of our shells and really volunteer and be on projects. It doesn't matter, yeah, but if you are not paid, you benefit at the long run, right? Through publications, through your conference being funded by a professor. Say, hey, okay, you are not being paid on a project, but at least I can fund you to attend this conference. So that was very beneficial to me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Kwesi. Very insightful. And I know we have students from different disciplines too, some in education, some in nursing, the different fields. And the volunteering doesn't have to be in education, but in all fields, right? And so that is very important to also note. So thank you so much, Kwesi and Ziva. Chikbo, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just quickly, like I agree with what Jifa and Kwesi said. I think it makes a lot of sense to volunteer and be out there, network, and build those connections. At the same time, I just to add, I think it's also important to remember that one is a student and to be a good student, which is essentially what Jifa and Kwesi are saying. Because if you're a good student, those are the things you do. And I don't mean good, I mean understanding what it means to be a student, and be a motivated student who is seeking to position oneself and be ready for opportunities and build capacity, right? Those are the things that help you get the kinds of jobs you want. What also usually helps, I think, is to know what you want upfront. Not wait for whatever is there and then you throw yourself into different things and so on. Sometimes that works, but you may not, in the long run, find satisfaction in that. I think many of the students I've worked with in the past who knew exactly what they wanted upfront, they all successfully got into those kinds of jobs. Some later moved on to something else when they didn't like the jobs, but they got those positions. And knowing what they wanted meant they had to build capacity towards that. So they were positioning themselves to take advantage of opportunities in that area. Reading up, knowledge base is important, skills are important. Developing oneself, networking within the kinds of fields that they wanted, so that by the time opportunities presented themselves, there were scholarships my friends and I applied for and got those scholarships, not because we were really good, but because we were ready when those scholarship opportunities we advertised. And many great students who probably, if they competed, would have got those scholarships, weren't ready, so they didn't apply. So we applied. And jobs are also usually like that. So if you are ready to take advantage of opportunities, I think you usually have that one leg up.
Okay, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. There's a question in the chat: preparation to land an assistant prof job before, let me go back to that, before finishing the PhD or not. So postdoc or no, preparation to land an assistant prof job before finishing the PhD or not. And that is coming from Asto. So that is an interesting question as well. And as we reflect on that, we will try to answer that question later. We'll keep it for later, so we're not dismissing your question as we get into that segment a little bit later on. And we're going to move into the next theme about how students navigate with courage and purpose in their pursuit for academic excellence here in Canada. And we know that can be stressful. And so how do these students navigate their mental health and also cultural biases that may exist within their time here as a student? And so one of the questions was, how do they stay motivated while dealing with these cultural biases, racism, financial expenses, as you have answered some of those questions earlier, so how to acquire jobs and so on. But sometimes these financial obligations can become burdensome for students because of different factors. And again, those tend to play a role in their mental health. Feelings of loneliness, feeling homesick when they get here. How do they navigate? What steps can they take? What do you think may be helpful for them as they deal with some of these issues while pursuing their studies? And I'll go with Kwesi first this time because we're turning it around. Kwesi.
Okay, thank you so much. And whilst you were, talking about this question, like reading out a question, an incident, a story just came to mind. There was this student on campus at UBC who was mentally really drained and very depressed and very suicidal. So she went to UBC services to seek support from the counselor. And then when she got there, she was given a questionnaire to complete. That was the first thing. So, when does it happen and all that. So she filled a very long questionnaire. And he said, and then later on, she shared her experience with me. He said, you know what, that wasn't counseling. That wasn't helpful at all. Just talking to you. By then I had, had a conversation with her for a very long time. Say, you know what, just talking to you makes me feel better now, right? So yeah, the way we see mental health from African perspective is so different, right? When people even ask you to go ask some student or to go and seek mental support, they feel insulted. They said, I'm not mad, I'm not crazy, right? So there is that kind of cultural understanding of what mental health means or doesn't constitute mental health. Okay, so that student was getting the services, but again, her expectation was so different, right? And didn't feel like she was even supported at all. So again, it comes from our culture. I don't blame the student. I don't blame the facilities that were offered to her. So I feel reaching out to people is very important in my own experience, talking to people, talking to senior colleagues who are doing the same program with me, or just reaching out to, depending on the kind of professor you have. I had a very great support from some of my professors on campus, and I was so free to share all my personal the challenges that I was having. So some professors are very kind to listen without being judgmental, without using those challenges against you. So know whom to share with. I feel that is very, very important. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kwesi. And I'm going back to Diva, and then Chikbo will come over to you soon. So Diva, do you have anything to add to what Kwesi said about dealing with feelings of loneliness and depression sometimes, feelings of inadequacy sometimes as they navigate these processes?
Yeah, few things. One is recognizing and knowing yourself. So knowing yourself, meaning that I know where my energy level normally reside. And so knowing myself helps me recognize signs and symptoms that I might be needing a little bit more support. A counselor once, I had them speak to my students during COVID, talked about green zone, yellow zone, and red zone. So knowing how you feel when you're in that green zone, knowing what you're feeling, what the yellow zones look like and what the red zones look like. So if you're usually a fairly active person and you're finding yourself not wanting to get out of bed, interact with people, that might actually be the sign that you need to actually reach out to somebody before you get to the suicidal ideation piece. So I think one of the first things I would say is know yourself best. So try and know what those signs are. The second is, I think sometimes we come here and talking about this. I just got back from Ghana, so I'm like in that, when you come back from home, you're like on cloud 7, not 7, 11. You're like, everything's so great. Sometimes when we come here, we don't have as strong of a connection back to our roots, right? So making sure that you keep that lifeline going, because talking to people back home makes you realize why you're here, your purpose, right? There are a lot of things going on, and the thing is, you have to sort of sift through that and keep your focus and your goal front and center. So, making sure you have some regular connection with people that know you, people that are rooting for you, people who can even sense those signs and symptoms that you may not be. I know people that I can get on the phone with right now, and before I say my second word, they know, they're sitting down, they're like, okay, what's going on, right? They can just sense from your voice that you need a little bit of TLC right now. So I think those are some suggestions. And back to what Kwesi was saying about that connection with faculty, I just want to say that you want to be careful with some of those things, right? Sometimes if you unload too much onto your supervisor or some of those things, it may come back in different ways. So, really know and choose the people that you will feel that sense of vulnerability with. And that may not be your supervisor. That may be somebody from a different department, somebody from your country in a different place, right? That you can share those vulnerabilities with without the supervisor or the person taking that information kind of like, well, maybe I won't ask them for their draft this week, even though you're like 2 months behind schedule. Maybe, like, because I'm not saying in a bad way, maybe they're really trying to be supportive, but now they're not going to actually push you as, as far as they, you want to get things done because they're, and it can be in a bad way too. So I guess my point around that is just be careful who you kind of disclose some of those more sensitive matters to. I would say go with somebody that knows the culture, because certain things don't get raised to that level of escalated to that level that it doesn't really need to be.
Thank you so much, Ziva, for adding that to the discussion. Chikbo, do you have anything to add to that?
I think my colleagues have said it all. So if you see what I'm
Okay.
saying, but the just to reiterate some of the points, I think I've had similar experiences of students coming to me to say, well, I explored going to counselors, going to see doctors, and so on, and they just don't seem to understand what I'm dealing with, and if anything, exposing myself in those ways worked much worse for me, and so on. But again, some of what some of my colleagues and I did when we were students, because many of us actually had mental health struggles, not just coming from the rigor of the research we were doing as PhD or master's student researchers, or the rigor of coursework and the program, but the loneliness of being an international student immigrant here. And the sickness that racism can cause, actually. I mean, racism is a disease. It can affect you in ways that you cannot put into words. Like, I mean, the very toxicity in the atmosphere alone can just walk into a place where you are not wanted. Your body knows, your body viscerally responds to that. That does something to your psyche that you cannot explain or understand, right? So you are dealing with a lot in terms of mental health struggles here. But some of what we did was, I loved cooking. I had another guy who loved cooking. So we would call different folks together and we'll be together and then start cooking. From morning till late afternoon, we would have cooked and filled the house with food, and people from everywhere would come and they would eat with us and we would chat. So we used to do that regularly, at least once every month. And that was really helpful. Folks who used to feel isolated, like, you don't necessarily have to be very tight, close friends, but that seemed to bring us together. And they were the ones asking us, when are we cooking again? When are we having this? We would bring Ghanaians, say, come and prove that your jollof rice is better than Nigerian one. And then we would cook our own jollof rice. They would cook theirs and we'd mock them and laugh together and do all that. Again, food is, it's part of the cultural practice that I think people respond to in different ways. We all eat. We have to eat to survive, right? So we cooked together, ate together, jubilated together, danced. Music used to be part of it. And people found one another. Sometimes it's basic things. How do you connect with the next person? How do you find a companion? Some other ones, it's how do you find intellectual companions who you share ideas with and they understand you. So that way we sort of try to help ourselves through the difficulties. Yeah, soccer too. We were going out to play soccer over the weekends, and Ghanaians were always winning. That front, but yeah, we found things that we were doing together that helped us to sort of create community amongst ourselves and eased some of the toxicity. But in terms of motivation, just keep in view what I think Jifa was also mentioning. Keep in view why you are here and what you are seeking, right? So that when all the chips, everything seems to be working against you, you just say, yeah, it's one of those things. But if I get what I'm here for, that probably might help me. It might make all the difference in the long run to rationalize something that I cannot make sense of at that point.
Thank you
Can I
so
add
much.
one more?
Yes,
Sorry, can I?
Latika, go ahead and add your comment.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to hear your thoughts, and I've learned a lot. And it's a pleasure to be with you all. I just wanted to add, I also came here as an international student, and currently I'm a colleague of Kishai at University of Winnipeg, and Kwesi and I, we were classmates at UBC before, so I'm really pleased to be part of this community. I just wanted to add, it's important as a student and as a person also to, like what you said, Shifa, is knowing who you are and not comparing that to others, because everyone has their own life journey. And sometimes when we feel that other person has more publications or more success or more scholarships or a better job or an earlier job, we feel less. And with the social media, it also becomes so much pronounced. And I came to this country as a parent with two daughters. My husband was still working outside, so my situation was very different. Like what you said, network or volunteer, I had very limited choices. I had to choose selectively when my children are at school, only those classes I can attend. I can only volunteer on Saturdays. I can only work in the campus of university. I cannot go out. And those were limitations. But then also knowing your strengths and recognizing that you're here for a purpose is very important. And everyone has their own life path is very important. And sometimes you find support around you. Like it might be not very, I would say very big support, but small supports. Like when I went to the library, I talked with the librarian and I said, I don't know how to use this reference management system. And they told me that there is a Center for Teaching and Learning that organizes the workshops. So I went there and they told me, oh, you are really interested in community engaged learning. So we have another center. So that's how you come to know, and one person can guide you in another way. And then sometimes you get support from your peers. And like Kwesi and I, we were very good colleagues and we were classmates and we thought about, and later on we continued, we even wrote a paper together. So those relationships can build, and sometimes you may not have a same person. Like I didn't have anybody from India, but I had colleagues from different countries of Africa. I had colleagues from Nepal who were my neighbors, and they became my community. So when we think about cultural ways of knowing, many times our cultural ways of knowing are overlapping and our understandings are overlapping, and we might feel that we are lonely, but sometimes if we look around, we will see that everybody is lonely in their own way, and we can provide community to each one of us.
That's very powerful, Latika.
Can
I
I
see
just add to
Diva
that?
want to
Yeah,
add.
I just want to say yes. I want to commend and echo what you just said, Latika, because I think, I think there was an earlier question about how do I connect with other African students and all of those things. Well, there might be a situation where you're the only one. Every place I have been, I think my undergrad, there was an individual from the Caribbean, right? But everywhere else I've been the only African person there. So if my need is to connect with Africans, I will be automatically behind the eight ball, they would say, right? Like I need to expand. And like what you were saying, like in my PhD, my biggest support was actually a friend of mine from South Korea. different places, but we understood each other in a very different way than others, some of the American students did. And we remain friends till today as colleagues. She's going for a full prof, and we're trying to find ways to help one another out. So when you are here as a student, an international student, yes, look within your community, but that community can be a very broad definition, not community based on ethnicity, color, or whatnot. It could be community based on, just that you both are parents and you're going to support one another to get through this. So be a little bit broad and be a bit adventurous and a bit vulnerable in terms of connecting with somebody that may not necessarily look like you, but they might actually be your best support system.
Very profound. I am just here and I'm just saying in my head, thank you guys so much for this wonderful discussion. And I think Latika and Diva and Kwesi and Chikbo, you all echoed what I had in mind when it comes to this question. And I'm just going to leave this one quote that I usually use with myself. I'm a Jamaican, I'm Black, and I consider myself I'm an African as well, as a descendant of Africa. So don't measure your success with another person's ruler. That's something that I always use with myself. Just as Atika said, we're all on our own journey, right? Focus on that. Don't use and it can be a very, what I would say, troubling experience when you see another student, progressing faster, who may have come in after you, but focus on use your ruler to measure your progress. Don't use another person's ruler. And the last thing I'll say about dealing with feelings of belonging and loneliness, which I've used for myself. Sometimes, just as Ziva said, when you sit in some spaces, you're the only Black person in that space, and you may feel as if you don't belong. But the truth is you belong. Why? Because you're there. So they're coming from so many different places. Some persons may be from different countries, different disciplines. The skin color may be different, but because you're in that same room, you would have done the legwork to be there. And because you're there, you belong in that space. So it goes back to what Ziva was saying was, know who you are, right? And build on that as you situate yourself in those spaces. You belong there. And so you're going to work on that. Tell yourself, this is where I belong at this point in time, as you deal with those feelings of loneliness, depression, feelings of inadequacy then. So thank you so much for this wonderful discussion, Kwesi, Chikbo, and Diva. And thanks for adding those comments in the chat. And Latika, thank you for your comments as well. And as we're wrapping up, I just want to touch on the final question about success criteria. What would you say are some success criteria for being an African student or Black student here in Canada? If you're thinking of even becoming a student, what would you say to a person from Africa or from the Caribbean, whoever is Black? How can you be successful here in Canada? Your final thoughts on that. And we'll go with, I'm going back to Chikbo this time, and then I'll come back around to you, Ziva, and then Kwesi.
Yeah, I think we've already touched on so many of what I have in mind already. Again, know why you are here and what you are looking for. I think it's not an advantage, but one of the distinctive things about being an immigrant is the extra energy, extra motivation to be outstanding. And sometimes it's not necessarily a good thing to overwork oneself in order to prove a point, or because there's an extra expectation on one. But you can use that. And that's the thing. I think many immigrants, especially African immigrants here, are very successful, highly educated people. So you won't be the first person to do something or be distinctive. Just understand that being an immigrant already prepares you in a way that many people that you probably will compete with for positions have not been prepared. Tap that energy, like take advantage of who you are, your position as a marginalized person, because you're marginal in this society as an immigrant. Use that, work with that, and keep in view what you're seeking. I think you might succeed. And if you don't, there's nothing wrong with that. You just keep trying.
Thank you so much, Chikbo, for your final thoughts on how to be a successful student in Canada, navigating with purpose and courage. And we go over to Ziva for her final thoughts, and then Kwesi.
Thank you for the question. And I think I will just maybe work a response to the question that was in the chat earlier about postdoc versus no postdoc. To say, again, reflecting back to what we're saying about your success will look very different. Your journey is going to look very different to other people around you. So postdoc versus no postdoc. If you can get a job in academia and that's what you want, go for the assistant prof. If you're not able to and you have an opportunity for a postdoc, then that might make sense as you're sort of riding the wave to see what opportunities might come up. And I think in terms of what success might look like as an African student, you know, whenever I take a class, even now, I don't look at the grading structure. I look at what do I need to pass? Because what do I need to do to pass this class? That's all I care about. Most of the time, I always exceed that. But if I know what I want out of this class, is if I'm trying to become a licensed nurse, a registered nurse, I need to pass this course. And what do I need to do? Show up, do my reading, go to clinical, don't be late. I write those things down, I get it done. And if I get an A while I do it, awesome. If not, I guarantee you I will pass. So I just need to know what do I need to do to get out of this. And so, you know, you need to find your own definition of what success is going to look like. Yeah. Anyways, I will stop there because I know we're running out of time.
Thank you so much, Ziva. And we're running out of time because of the insightful discussion that you have all been having. And go ahead, Chikbo, before we take some questions, if our students have any. Kwesi, sorry. Kwesi, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it's very simple. As I said, as Jif already said, it's different from, you know, every student. I feel academic achievement isn't enough to be successful in Canada, although it's greater part of it. But I feel before you will be successful, your social well-being is very, very important. So how are you able to balance your social emotional being and academic work? I feel that is the greatest aspect. Okay, and also your ability to integrate into the school community and your own community as well. In terms of when I say your own community, again, it is not based on your ethnicity per se, but the student community or you know, your neighborhood and so on. So I feel this can pass as good criteria or for being a successful as an African immigrant.
Very insightful, Kwesi. Thank you so much for adding your final thoughts. And now we'll just take 5 minutes to just see if any of our students have any questions, additional questions that they may want to ask. And then we'll ask our founder, Loy, is just joining us to just say his final comments and thank yous. All right, any student, if you have any other question that you want to ask, now is the opportunity to turn your mics on, ask it orally, or you may type it in the chat before our wonderful speakers have to depart.
I know you said the last words.
Okay,
There was
go
something I
ahead.
wanted to
Go
say that I
ahead,
didn't
Eva.
say.
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say one of my biggest advice to folks trying to come here is select your supervisors wisely, select your schools wisely. I've, in my role, I spend more time talking with people, not students that I have, but students from other places that are struggling or that are not getting the support that they want. And then they're looking around for somebody, and somehow we get connected. And, do some research on your supervisors. I'm sure if you reach out to my colleagues on here, they might gently steer you to a different direction if you chose somebody they're like, oh my goodness, why do you want that person as your supervisor? So do some background work in selecting your supervisors, because that can actually save you a whole lot of problem in the long run. And the same goes to your institution. Do some research, find out who's gone there, find out what the issues they may have encountered, and then see if is this something you can tolerate or not. But that would be one of my biggest advice to folks.
Thank you so much, Ziva, for adding that. Does any other student have any question, or anyone joining us, one from the audience?
I just wanted to ask one more thing, I think to Kwesi and other people who might be parents. So what advice you would give to people who are parents or becoming parents in terms of schooling? Because when I came to Canada, I did not know that like French immersion school exists, and I did not know having that French immersion opportunity would brighten my children's future perspective in the career choices. So what advice would you give to students who might be coming new and who are just bringing in their families, or maybe thinking of becoming broadly becoming a family or connecting with the community?
Thank you for your question, Latika.
So maybe I'll go first. Oh, sorry, Kwesi, do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Jifa.
Oh, I was just going to say your children's well-being is fundamental to your success as a student. So even when we moved back here from the US, it was a really rough transition for my child initially. And that transition for him made myself unsettled, which made it harder for me to do my job, and all of those things. So your child's success is fundamental to your success. My advice would be to, if you do have the ability to come and scope out the places, try and do that before you go back and get your kid, if you're able to. Talk to parents, connect with people before you get here. If you have to bring your kids with you, find out what are the school system, what are the daycare. Daycare was so challenging to find when I got here as well. So I think the biggest advice would be to just connect with other people that are parents. Have your program connect you that way, or go through the community, and then start scoping out the different places that you want to put your kid. And also just go out there and spend time there too. Sometimes our children are so young and they don't know, and they can't tell us certain things. If you go there and you're not getting treated well, I guarantee you your child is not getting treated well, right? So try and spend some time in those environments as well, like drop into the classes, volunteer for the field trips if you're able to, in between classes or whatnot. And that's it.
One second part of my question was also around able to provide healthcare, because I now have some graduate students with University of Manitoba who have children who might have healthcare needs, and they are not able to support them because of insurance and other things. So if I can add another layer to that.
Yeah, thank you, Latika, for asking. And Jifa, I think you've said everything. So I will I will start with Latika's last question about insurance. I think each province has different system. So if I'm speaking to Alberta province, I think if you are a student, it covers all your family members, I think. And similar to UBC, or sorry, Vancouver or British Columbia, if you are a parent and you are a student, your insurance cover your dependents too. So I think for that, but I don't know to what extent, that support is stretched, right? And regarding daycare and so on, and actually I didn't know that people register their kids even when they are conceived, right? At the time of conception, you have to register at a daycare. Okay. A year or maybe something like that, yeah, in advance. So anyway, or 9 months or 8 months in advance. I didn't know that. So my family arrived and I was looking for daycare and it was so difficult. So they had to put him on wait list for almost 6, 7 months. That was very challenging for me being a PhD student and also my kid not having a daycare. I had to, support, at home. So that was really tough for me. So knowing all this in advance will mean that you're seeking out for the information. Otherwise, you will not know. So yeah, if you have plans of bringing family, it's very important to seek for the information, yeah, from other parents who have navigated through that.
Thank you so much, Kwesi and Ziva. And there's a comment in the chat about consulting with Facebook. You may find some information on social media as well about settling in with families. So thank you so much for that.
I think just to add, in Manitoba, if you're an international student with kids, you need to buy additional insurance for your family. It wasn't like that when I started my PhD program in 2013. In fact, the province covered you. You didn't need any insurance. But then in trying to exploit international students to subsidize education and healthcare in Canada, that changed over time. But that's the present situation in Manitoba now. You need to buy extra coverage for your family. But the question of language, again, this is like, it's good to expose kids to different languages, English, French, and so on. But especially for immigrant families, I think one of the struggles is how to balance that, have their kids know their own indigenous languages and not be overwhelmed with the exposure to English, especially, or French, and then forget how to speak their native languages. I think that's usually a struggle. I know there's a way the system encourages us to get this English and French thing in order to empower the kids to have all this, but that might not necessarily be a good thing. That is just to critically look at that again and see how one balances that with having the kids know way many languages, most especially the language of where they are coming from. Otherwise, we have kids who can speak English and French way better than we can ever do, but we cannot speak our own languages to them. I think that's tragic.
I understand that, and psychologically now we say that children who are exposed to more languages at the younger age are able to learn more languages. But I was also talking about the life and career choices, because with my children, when they came, they were at elementary age. And I was not aware that there is a French immersion and all those things. But that, to cut to the story short, is that when they now want to apply for different programs, certain programs privilege if you are bilingual French and English, even for medical school entrance and other things. And that is something no one told us. And then another thing, like if you're moving from province to province to province, then your children might not have that in-province advantage, which Canadian system is not federal system in terms of education.
Mhm.
So like, for example, if you have teacher certification from one province, you move to another, you have to apply again. So
Mhm.
that's a hidden cost involved that many of us pay. And we don't have choices because we move because of employment and other things. But that's what also people need to consider. Like if you're thinking of doing masters, make sure that you're thinking of doing PhD from the same institution, or if your family is settling, because if you move again and again and again, it might be asking you to pay a price in the long term. Not only you, but your family will be paying that price in many other ways.
Thank you so much again for the insightful discussion. I've learned so much from all of you tonight. And as we come to a close, we're going to ask Loy, our founder of Loy Excellentia Initiative, a mentorship program. And the reason we are here to mentor our students, African students, as they navigate their education journey with courage and purpose. And if I were a student sitting here tonight, I would definitely say I've gained some insightful tips on how to do that effectively. So thank you so much. Aloy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kishai. Before I say anything, I have to apologize sincerely for not being here at the beginning of the event because I'm currently in Toronto where I am in the ceremony for the top 25 Canadian Immigrant Award, which I'm one of the recipients. And so I thank each and every one of you for voting for me and voting for Loy Excellentia. So Loy Excellentia actually is represented in the celebration. So thank you so much for that. And I thank our panelists, Doctors Chibo, Zifa, and Kwesi, for their time getting ready for this, sharing everything they have, and sharing their experiences with everyone here. I thank Akishai for hosting this, being the best host so far, and indeed all of you that participated. I know it might not be the best time for many people, but you still sacrifice your time to be part of this. Just know that all we are doing is to support one another. Part of the goal is that we want a community where Africans are known for being excellent, so that whenever anybody sees anybody from African descent or Black or Caribbean, to say these are people who are committed, who you can trust, who you can help, and then they can support you. So with that note, I want you to take the word out there, invite and encourage all your friends that are of African descent to follow us on all our social media handles and then be participating in all the events we have. So thank you so much. I appreciate being part of this evening event. And yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. And just my final thoughts. I'm just going to repeat how I opened the webinar. Success is not final and failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.